There's something profoundly curious about what we call spiritual awakening. People seek this state as if it were a hidden portal, a revelation reserved for a few. But, as Alan Watts once said, awakening is not about discovering something new. It's about seeing what has always been right before your eyes. Think for a moment. How many times have you truly looked at the world without naming it? When was the last time you looked at a tree without thinking the word tree? Most of us don't see the real. We see the concept, the label, the mental echo. We live immersed in language that separates us from life. We don't experience existence. We think about it. The awakened man, however, breaks through this silent hypnosis. He realizes there's nothing mystical about what he sees, only the simple, revealed, stripped of interpretation. Where the ordinary person sees a mere form, the awakened sees the universe itself in motion, the dance of light upon matter, the miracle of being. And perhaps that's what others fail to see, not because they lack vision, but because they look too much with their eyes and too little with their soul. Today, we will cross this veil together. We'll come to understand what it truly means to see, not with the mind that names, but with the consciousness that silences. If this theme resonates with you, leave your comment below. This is your space, your inner sanctuary. Chapter 1. The world as a collective trance. We live within a trance that almost no one recognizes, a hypnotic state sustained by words, concepts, and memories. A collective narrative that has replaced life with representations of life. Alan Watts said, "We confuse the map with the territory, the menu with the meal," and that's exactly what we do every day. The modern human rarely sees the real. He merely interprets, analyzes, compares, labels. When we look at a flower, we don't truly see it. We see the idea we have of it, the memory of another flower, the symbolic association projected by the mind. Thus, the world we call reality is, in truth, a shared dream, a web of concepts that traps us in a theater of names. We live inside a mental simulation where thought has become the mediator between us and everything that exists. But the truth is that this very thought, the one we believe to be so essential, is also what separates us from life. It's the constant noise that prevents silence from revealing the obvious. Watts said, "The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master." And most people live serving that tyrant, an inner narrator that comments on every gesture, judges every emotion, and without our noticing, keeps us captive to the past and the future. The result is a deep detachment from direct experience. People don't live, they think about living. They don't breathe, they analyze breathing. They don't feel, they try to understand what they feel. That distance is humanity's true sleep, a perceptual slumber. The spiritually awakened man, however, wakes from this trance. He realizes that the world was never hidden, only covered by a layer of concepts. When the mind becomes still, the real reveals itself. Simple, pure, indescribable. And what once was ordinary becomes sacred. The leaf, the sound of the wind, the shimmer of water, all take on an intensity nearly impossible to express in words. Awakening, then, is not a distant miracle. It is the end of translation. It is seeing life without intermediaries, without the foggy lens of thought. It is finally waking from the dream of separation. Chapter 2. The breaking of the spell, seeing what has always been here. Awakening is, above all, a breaking of enchantment. It's not the acquisition of a new power, nor access to a secret plane of existence. It is, paradoxically, the collapse of illusion, the dissolution of the mental layers that distort the real. Alan Watts said, "What the awakened one sees is not something extra, it's what remains when the superfluous dissolves." And that's exactly it. What remains when the noise of the mind ceases is naked, vibrant, immediate life. The one who awakens realizes there's nothing to attain, for what he was seeking is already here, in this exact instant. He discovers that the problem was never the absence of the divine, but the excess of thoughts, fears, and interpretations that covered it. Clear vision doesn't come from effort, but from surrender, ceasing to try to see, and then seeing. Imagine gazing at a simple candle flame in total silence, without naming it, without describing it, just observing its movement, the dance of fire in the air. For a few seconds, you may perceive something that's no longer merely a flame, but the very mystery of existence revealing itself before you. That moment of silence is the crack through which the real seeps in. Watts used to say that seeing reality directly is like waking up and realizing there was never a dream, only the habit of sleeping. At that point, the awakened person understands. The world was always there, but he saw it through a mist, the mist of the self. When that constructed identity begins to dissolve, the gaze becomes clear, transparent, innocent. The spell breaks, and the ordinary reveals its mystical depth. A fallen leaf ceases to be an object. It becomes a testament of time. The face of a stranger ceases to be just another. It becomes the mirror of one's own being, and silence, once empty, comes to contain the entire universe. Awakening is not an escape from reality. It's a return to it. To see what has always been here, with eyes free from the past. Chapter 3. The dissolution of the self and the rediscovery of the whole. The deepest discovery of the spiritually awakened being is that the self he believed existed was never really there. Alan Watts called this illusion the ego encapsulated in skin. The idea that we are small entities, isolated from the rest of the universe, inhabiting a body and trying to control life from within. But this sense of separation is only a well-rehearsed fiction, a narrative the mind repeats until it feels real. The awakened realizes that the I is only a recurring thought, a voice within consciousness that says, I like, I don't like, I want, I fear. But that voice is observed, and whatever can be observed cannot be what you are. That which observes, the silent space where thoughts appear and disappear, that is what you are in essence. Not a form, not a story, but the very field of consciousness in which everything happens. And then separation dissolves. Inside and outside, self and other, become mere linguistic conventions. As you breathe, the air becomes part of you. As you exhale, you become part of the air. When you eat a fruit, it becomes blood, energy, life. Where exactly do you end and the world begin? The line is imaginary. Nature recognizes no boundaries, only continuity. In that recognition arises a silent tenderness. To harm another becomes unthinkable, for the other is but an extension of oneself. Caring for the earth, for animals, for relationships ceases to be a moral virtue. It becomes pure instinct for the preservation of the totality. Alan Watts said, "You are a function of the universe, just as a wave is a function of the ocean." The awakened understands this not as metaphor but as direct perception. He knows himself as part of the whole, and at the same time the whole recognizes itself through him. If at any moment in your life you felt, even for an instant, that everything was connected, share your experience below. Perhaps, without realizing it, you have already glimpsed the unity behind the veil of form. Chapter 4. The invisible intelligence that moves everything. There exists a silent wisdom sustaining every beat of your heart. It asks for no permission, needs no command, seeks no recognition. While you sleep, it makes your blood flow, your skin renew, the stars continue their course. Alan Watts said, "You are not living life. Life is living you." And that is one of the most astonishing secrets the awakened discovers. The ego is not the author of existence. It is merely a character within the cosmic play. From birth, we've been conditioned to believe we are in control. Culture has taught us to think in terms of control, planning, and achievement. But the more we try to control, the more fear we feel, because deep down we know control is an illusion. The river of life flows on its own, and the effort to dam its flow is what generates suffering. The awakened man surrenders to this invisible intelligence, not as one who gives up, but as one who trusts. He realizes there is something infinitely vaster than the mind orchestrating events. The same principle that makes the sun rise is what guides him in small decisions, in spontaneous gestures, in the right words that arise without calculation. Watts would ask, how could consciousness arise from an unconscious universe? The answer is simple and overwhelming. It couldn't. Consciousness is the foundation of the universe. The cosmos is not a dead machine that accidentally produced thinking beings. It is a living intelligence manifesting as everything that exists. Awakening is recognizing that the same power that moves the planets is what moves your thoughts, and that you are not separate from that power. You are its expression. When that understanding takes root, an indescribable relief arises. The struggle ceases. Life is no longer a battle against the unpredictable, but a dance with mystery. Nothing is wasted, nothing is out of place. You are lived by the very force that moves the universe, and for the first time, that is enough. Chapter 5: Time, the Now, and the Silence of the Mind. The ordinary man lives imprisoned in a subtle illusion, that of time. He believes life is a line, a continuous thread pulling him from past to future, leaving the present as a mere bridge between what was and what will be. But Alan Watts said, "The past is a present memory, and the future is a present anticipation. There is only the now." Awakening is the collapse of that fiction. It's the moment you realize you have never been anywhere but here, never lived in any moment but this one. The rest is imagination. Shadows cast by a mind that doesn't know how to rest. The mind constructs time to feel in control, to sustain the illusion of progress, of getting there. But there never comes, because life happens only here. The awakened understands that psychological time, made of regrets, fears, and expectations, is the ego's nourishment. Without the past to sustain its story, and without the future to project its desires, the ego dissolves. And in that silent emptiness, being finds peace. Presence is not an effort. It is the natural state when thought quiets. Try it now for a moment. Stop whatever you're doing. Feel the air entering and leaving your body. Notice the sounds around you. Don't describe, don't name, just perceive. That space of pure attention is what Watts called awakened consciousness. It's here that reality reveals its perfection, not an ideal perfection, but the perfection of being exactly as it is. When the mind surrenders to the now, a silence emerges. Not the absence of sound, but absolute presence. The world remains the same, the streets, the noise, the body, the concerns, yet something in you shifts. You cease to be inside time, and time begins to be inside you. And in that instant you understand, eternity is not infinite duration. It is the depth of this moment. Conclusion: the gaze that sees the infinite. What the spiritually awakened person sees is not a new world. It's the same world, freed from the layers that obscured it. He hasn't crossed a mystical portal or found secrets hidden in sacred books. He has merely stripped away the excess, until only the essential remains, the living instant, the conscious being, the miracle of now. Alan Watts said, "Awakening is not about gaining something, but losing what was never yours." And that's what the awakened lives, the loss of the illusion of control, of time, of separation. By seeing without the filter of ego, he rediscovers the simple, and realizes that the simple is the sacred. Nothing has changed, except the gaze. And it's that gaze that transforms everything. Awakening doesn't make life perfect. Pain still exists, the body still feels, the tides of existence continue to move. But resistance ceases. The suffering born from fighting the inevitable dissolves into serene acceptance of what is. Life begins to flow like music, sometimes soft, sometimes stormy, but always perfect in its impermanence. And finally, the awakened one understands the central paradox. He was never separate from what he sought. The seeker and the sought were one from the very beginning. The consciousness that longs for truth is truth itself, trying to remember itself. So look around and see. Everything you seek is exactly where it has always been. Here, now, in the silence between thoughts, in the space that hears these words. You are the universe itself, looking at itself through these eyes. If this video touched something within you, share your insight in the comments and subscribe to Inner Sanctuary, the space where awakening finds its voice.